Can global norms that were designed for the analog world, such as sovereignty, non-intervention, discrimination, right intention, and proportionality, still hold up in an increasingly digitized world? Professor Lang, would you like to start us off again, please?
Sure. I think it's a really important question because norms emerge in particular times and places, and they relate to particular practices. However, there's of course the something that I've worked on a bit, and I know Mary Ellen has thought about as well, which is the just war tradition, which of course emerged hundreds, if not thousands, of years ago, and its principles are still ones we return to, and its principles are also ones that exist across different cultures. Although they may be called different things, but they're certainly within the Islamic tradition, Chinese tradition. There's parallel conceptions. So, having said that as a starting point, I think the norms that have developed in an analog age can be adapted into something that we can try to think through their relevance for this world of more automation. And so I'll just highlight it. I'll just point to a couple of them, just to throw some ideas out there, because I do think they're still relevant, they're of relevance, and I think they're important for us to hold on to. So let me just note, first one is the notion of intentionality. Now, within the just war tradition, there's an idea of right intention, which is about launching a war, not necessarily about what you do on the battlefield, which has other norms governing it. But I think it's a relevant norm for us to think about in a broader moral sense as well. And one of the issues would be, I know as General Breedlove just pointed out to us, we're not quite at the fully automated weapon yet. The Terminator hasn't hit the battlefield quite yet. But at the same time, we're getting there. And so the question of intentionality and can a machine, so to speak, be meaningfully talked about as having intentions? I think that's problematic. And any moral standard, any moral behavior has to have some intentionality behind it, or else we can't hold an agent responsible. We can't give an agent kind of responsibilities for the future. And I think those are really important things for us to think about. I don't know enough about the technology that does exist to know whether or not intentionality can be applicable to some of this weaponry. So I think that's a really good and important question for us to think through together, maybe on this panel. Like, how can we think about intentionality? One other one, I guess, would be discrimination, which is one that is more on a battlefield question. For those of you who, discrimination sounds like a funny term, like we don't want to discrimination is a bad thing to do. But in the legal world and the ethical world, it means discriminating between civilians and soldiers. Or combatants and non-combatants. And the question, this is more, I think, relevant for cyber warfare. Well, I know we've been talking about automated weaponry, but cyber warfare, this is an issue, I think, because anytime there's a cyber or use of any kind of cyber technology, that's going to cross boundaries. We all use, everything as we're doing right now on the internet. And so to respond to a cyber attack with an alternative, with another cyber attack, is going to have civilian implications, not necessarily casualties, not necessarily harm. But I think that's one that we need to hold on to and try to be as careful as we can about this. And the last thing I would say on this one is, I've been doing a little work with the British military on some of these questions, doing some consulting work with them, and they're very interested in this question. To what extent, how do we think about this discrimination question when it comes to cyber conflict? And really thoughtful people within the military are trying to work this out across different sectors. So I think it's an important one for us to hold on to the principle, but not to be slavish about the principle either. I mean, it has to be something that we have to think carefully about. What are the implications of any kind of use of cyber technology for military, broadly defined purposes? So again, I'm raising more questions maybe than answers here, but I think they're important questions for us to think about. And I do think in answer to your overall question, Josephine, those principles, those norms do still apply. It's just a matter of, we have to be creative in how we think their application can be modified in order to be relevant for the contemporary world.